Dum 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 dum
Space Between.
What's going on? This is the Space Between podcast where we talk about the space between life and art, passion and business, what's happening now and what's happening next. It's Pat Shand.
Shannon Lee.
And I'm Amy Shan.
We got Shannon back up in this motherfucker.
Crazy.
Welcome back.
I feel like I don't know if you guys have ever seen this stuff, but have you seen like any like tour videos from rap concerts?
I mean, tour videos in general.
Okay.
I've seen.
Well, I remember I was obsessed with Eminem, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg's Up in Smoke tour.
Okay.
And I remember they would introduce people with such fucking passion. It's Ice Cube with this motherfucker! You know?
It's like when they call the like the football players as they're running out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's Shannon Lee! So listen. Shannon, at first when we started, we had like a kind of like rotating cast for the podcast. It was me, Amy, Shannon, and Ryan. But because of our schedules, it's been me and Amy for a while. But Shannon,
Because we live in the sticks.
Yeah.
and we live actually. I don't know if you guys know
In
this,
the actual woods.
but my wife Amy and I, we live together.
That's true. In
Okay?
the woods.
In the woods, in a cabin in the woods.
That's right.
So listen, Shannon is back because today we're doing the commentary for Prison Witch. And you know what? If you don't have Prison Witch, here's what you could do, okay? Go to Amazon right now. Type in Prison Witch Shand, okay? And it'll come up. It's a brand new graphic novel written by Amy, myself, illustrated by Erica D'Urso, a backup story by Katia Ranelli, lettered by Jim Campbell, and edited by
Your girl.
the great Shannon Lee, okay?
With the intro.
So listen, if our normal listeners and on YouTube viewers don't have the book, you can skip this podcast if you want to. But really, all you need to do, make a few clicks on Amazon, and the book will be yours to follow along. Well, what we're going to do here is I'll introduce each topic. Like, we're going to talk about the conception of the book, move on to the covers, and then finally we'll start getting to the content, which will be divided by chapter and then by scene, okay? So this is going to be a part 1 of 2 for this podcast. And here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of spoilers if you
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
read the book yet. And if you
Yeah.
have the book and you haven't read it, what the fuck you doing?
What is you doing?
Dum dum dum.
Dum 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 stupid.
Or busy, but you know, spoilers in this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just if you don't want spoilers for Prison Witch, Volume 1, The Feral.
Yeah, volume 1, by the way, you guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be an ongoing series.
Yeah, cough, cough, volume 2.
Coming soon. So listen, you guys ready to get into it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't want
I'm
to fall
ready.
behind, so make sure you read volume 1.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. So let's talk about how we came up with the Prison Witch idea. Okay.
Okay.
And do you remember where it was?
I don't remember where, but I remember the conversation.
All right, so it was at a convention, and I'm not going to say what convention it was, but let's just say that no one was there. You know?
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, we were bored out of our minds, and at that point, Amy and I were discussing a few ideas because Amy had at that point started building monsters. And she had some stories for them. Like, say, she would be working on Earth Nuggets, which is her adorable little base creature. You know, like the basic monster is an Earth Nugget, you say, right?
Yeah, they're very small. They're like miniature figures, and they're nugget shaped. And because of the color and the origin, because of my imagination, I named them Earth Nuggets. Imagine like just like a plot of Earth, and then all of a sudden a nugget shape forms out of it, like
Yes.
almost grows out of there. like a little tater tot. All of a sudden,
Tater tot is a perfect
comes
explanation.
out of the
for it.
dirt,
Exactly what they
and
look
it's
like.
dirt colored,
And they're
that's
made
the earth
of
nugget.
clay.
They're made of polymer clay. Yeah.
Yeah, so Amy made them first out of clay,
Yes.
and then a story was made around them,
Yes.
and a book was made around them.
Yeah, because Amy, she was introducing different kinds of monsters. Like, she started with the Earth Nuggets, and then as she introduced Sea Nuggets and Space Nuggets, she was telling me stories for all these various creatures. And I thought it'd be a great comic. And P.S. It is on Amazon too right now.
It became a comic.
It did. So I was pushing her to do that because I thought it would be a great all ages book. But during this con, you, Amy, said that you have 2 other story ideas. So at that point, you weren't sure how to take what you had for Clonsters because you had a narrative about the toys, but you weren't 100% sure how to transfer that narrative into become a comic, and you wanted to push a bit more on these 2 comic ideas that you had that weren't toys but were original ideas for a story. And one was Prison Witch, and at that point we didn't have a name for it.
No.
It was hold on, our cat Neil's gonna start sucking his own leg. It's gonna start like
I think I know what the other story was, but
Are we not gonna say it?
I wouldn't say it because I still want it to be a book.
I'd say genre, we could say.
Yeah.
Because Amy has had, I think that you right now have at least 2 ideas that you've brought up that we're exploring that we haven't like plotted out yet. But this one was the alien idea.
Oh, I don't know if I know about that one. I know.
Are you talking about the old lady?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know about
That's
that
the good one to me.
So Amy actually has 3. I forgot the lady.
Well,
Amy has
He's
3 ideas.
rising.
Shan.
He's rising. Now she has 3 ideas.
There's
Oh,
the,
I'm bubbling. You better
She's
watch
to
out.
the
Okay.
brim with ideas.
Oh yeah.
There's the alien idea. There is the old lady idea, and there is a robot idea.
Thank God for you guys that turn them into things.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So, can you give us a bit of like just background on what made you come up with the basic idea for Prison Witch?
Yeah, so basically it's a mixture. For me, the idea came from reading a lot about different religious practices and spiritual, I don't want to say like theories, but different stories of like origin stories and different practices of like witchcraft.
Yes.
And to me, I feel like the different ones that I read about, I could find for myself at least like a thread of similarity amongst all of them, like in a way. It's kind of hard to explain, but
No,
so
but
I was
for
reading.
sure.
Yeah,
I've noticed that most religions have some
Totally.
type of basis.
yeah, and it's just like where those people in the world at that time like were, and their experiences is kind of what shapes their daily practices, which I think is a huge thing. And so with these ladies in the book, they each have their own like set of beliefs, and they come from different places.
Yeah.
But they have a string that attaches each of them together, and that is the belief of like something larger that they connect to, you know, on the full moon together.
Yeah.
And they're able to escape the prison that they're literally living in. So there's that with like the daily practice and stuff, but the main character is more about a personal journey with like anger and not being able to place that. So it's kind of, to me, it was a mixture of like dealing with the physical, like actual, to me, what is like a mental disorder of like anger and anxiety and stuff, but also mixing that with witchcraft and with spirituality and things like that.
Yeah, and I think the base concept, when you told me that you wanted to do a story about witches in prison, it just seemed to me like one of the most marketable concepts that we could ever come up with. Mm-hmm. You know, it seems like hold on, wait, hey, he's hearing our cat is invading Shannon's bed.
It's an interesting time of day because they're like not
just
really
like
yet
watching
hungry,
them,
but
like,
they're just bored.
what's he trying to get at? There's not really anything in there.
All right, so
Imagine if it was a video podcast.
Right?
Oh my god.
We've got Amy with a cat on her lap, and now Pat with a cat on his lap.
Yeah,
it's very witchy.
there are familiars.
So people always do look for the like it's this meets this, and this was so easy. It's Orange is the New Black meets The Craft. It's such an easy sell, and I always grew up loving witch stories because what is so true about a story that has witchcraft is like say a vampire story, right? I'm obsessed with vampires. I can't end that story by going out and becoming a vampire. But with witchcraft, even like if you can't like make pink glitter in the air, you can go out and learn the actual craft of magic.
That's very true, yeah.
Yeah, and like technically the craft of magic isn't even tied to witchcraft. Like there's practical, it's just like a ritualistic movement of energy essentially. So anyway, when it came to this story, it's fun, it's exciting, and it's also personal. So that's why we decided to do this one.
Yeah.
Of the ideas first, at least besides Clonsters. Because Clonsters is all ages, and this one is for a more mature audience.
For sure.
When you came to me with the idea, this was one I knew we wanted to kind of like fast track because we as a company do stories with strong female characters all the time. I think all of our leads actually have been ladies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of...
We can't resist.
I mean, there's a lot of strong characters in Destiny New York. Like, there's Arvid, and things like that. But as far as... Because that's about... Essentially, Logan is the main character for that one. So
Absolutely,
she's a strong female character, too, so...
Yeah, so with this one, we knew that we were going to do it after you had the concept. So our next step was really to develop the cast and then to build a story around them. Because with a story like Prison Witch, where you can kind of... The concept allows for multiple stories to take place within this prison. So we wanted the story to focus on the characters and their issues rather than building characters to fit a story, right? Mm-hmm. The characters very much came first. So can you give us a bit of what went into building Cam and like who she is to you, how much of you is in there?
Yeah, the main character's name is Cameron Rivers.
Cameron Rivers, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say she... looks very similar to me.
Yeah.
She's got the red hair.
And she is the character that I would relate to the most because the story is about her and it's about her. The reason that she ends up in prison in the first place even is because she gets into like an altercation with someone in public and she has anger problems. And I definitely relate to that. So the characters around Cam are characters more from like my past and my imagination, whereas Cameron is more myself. Even her brother and her dad are like based on my brother and my dad.
For sure.
In the book. So we are very similar.
It's true. Say. And in fact, we even visually we had to direct the artists to make Cam a bit less like you. Because it's so funny. I actually created Destiny New York's Lilith before meeting Amy. But Amy looks a lot like that character.
Yeah.
So with Prison Witch, we also wanted a very unique look. Mm-hmm. So we gave Cam curlier hair and freckles. But really, there is so much of Amy in there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Mm-hmm. She has a lot more freckles than me.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So yeah, it all started with Cam, and we built the story around Cam, and then by introducing more characters. Like I remember very clearly like our process here. Like we wanted to build her coven pretty much, mm-hmm. And I think Cam came first, and then Rizzo. Rizzo was your idea too. She was
She's like the older leader kind of the coven that's in the prison. And she's been there for, I would say, the longest, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it goes back to what you were saying, too, about different practices, too. Because Rizzo is very much a green witch.
And so she has, like, that garden patch at the prison that she likes to tend to a lot. And she uses that to, like, cook and stuff and do her herbal spells, and she feels really strongly with that, and that's her thing in the book. Like that's her main practice.
Yeah, she's very connected to the elements and uses them to her advantage in certain situations.
Absolutely, yeah. And she visually, she's based on one of our friends. We have this great friend, also named Amy, actually, and she is a nurse, and we have stayed with her many times, and she has this sort of like caring but so tough and so a very powerful energy, you know?
Yeah, she's so like, she's not stoic, but she's like she's really nurturing and she's really loving, but she's very like, she's stern, you know?
Yes.
She is like someone who will treat you right, like only if you treat her right.
Absolutely.
That's the only way.
100%. That's a great way to describe her. And I think the same holds true for Rizzo. Like,
Totally.
we built a lot of Rizzo's characteristics around what we thought was so cool about Amy.
Yeah.
And like Rizzo, we'll get into this a bit more when we get into the scenes, but she's a bit of like a trickster character too. And like, there's a scene where she throws rocks at Cam to test how Cam's anger manifests, you know? And I think there could be a bit more of a saner approach to that, but Rizzo chose that way.
Yeah, it's like playful.
You know? Yeah. And then on my end, I was thinking of characters, and it's so funny because this character too ended up being so relevant to what Amy was going through at this time too. I remember driving home from Wendy's one day, and I pitched Amy the character of Cat Lady. This woman who was just like sort of a young rebel who was so invested in the idea of cats being pure that she decides to shoot up a shelter that kills cats.
Go and save them all, you know?
Pretty much, yeah. And Amy was instantly into Cat Lady. And in fact, Cat Lady has a bit of Amy in her as well. Because we, after that conversation, found this pet store where, let's just say, Amy didn't find it up to her standards. And I agreed.
It's not just my standards.
No, humane standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just giving you the point to launch off from here. Amy sort of wrote Cat Lady in prison, which to manifest the anger, because if you actually do what Cat Lady did, you end up in prison with a bunch of witches. But if you write someone who did it, that's that catharsis, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Get it out that way.
Absolutely. And then you came up with Georgie.
Yeah, because there's a girl that I knew in elementary school that like looks exactly like Georgie in the book, but I don't really remember her personality. I think she was younger than me, but I just remember she had really sandy blonde, like curly, long hair, and so many freckles and glasses, and she was like skinny.
What made you what made you think of Georgie's need for speed? Because Georgie is this like super energetic, coked up character.
It reminds me of, because I have like certain movies that I'm like really tied to from my childhood. One of them being Holes.
Oh, Amy talks about Holes all the time.
We have talked about this.
Yes.
The crush.
A lot. Yeah, because my first celebrity crush, besides Ludacris, was, I'm serious, the guy who played Zero.
Yeah, that's right.
And I loved that movie. I love that book. In it, there's a character that's at the camp. His name's Twitch.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember this?
Yes.
Small character, little white boy. And he, same as Georgie, but it was just so long ago, and she's a different character.
Oh yeah, like it's definitely not ripping off Holes in any way.
I have a strong love for that movie forever.
Yeah.
And I just feel that Georgie, like, the thing about Georgie is that she's like the sweetest thing ever.
Yes.
She's so nice.
Yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't
And her
expect
problem is kind of
anything.
like not malicious.
No.
It's
Right.
like an addiction.
Yes.
You know,
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
that's why I say Need for Speed, because she's so like sappingly sweet that you'd meet her or like go visit her in jail and be like, what is she doing here? You know what I mean? But then she jacks your car.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I like about her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
She doesn't want to be mean to you. Like, she doesn't think about how much you spent on the car or anything like that. She's just like, oh my god, there it is. Like that.
Yeah.
And I relate to that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she wants to steal the car. She wants the adventure and excitement of fleeing the scene, getting away with something.
Yeah, like the people that stole our
doing some
freaking
drugs. Yeah.
beautiful blue and took it right down the street and parked it.
Yeah, someone stole a fucking our
Georgie
car.
right there.
That's
Yeah,
Georgie.
exactly.
And then in the Coven 2, there's Kalia. And Kalia is actually the first character who we spotlight in our bonus story. Because every volume of Prison Witch will end with a bonus story focusing on one of the inmates. And Kalia is the first one to get that, and is also one of the more prominent characters from the Coven. And she is visually based on Young M.A., kind of. She's a rapper that Amy and I follow. And we thought it would be cool to have someone with that type of confidence and that type of power in the Coven, because so many of these ladies are going through their own issues. Like Cam, throughout the entire book, is in a place of like, am I insane? Like, am I here because of me or something external happening to me? Cat Lady is sort of just like trying to live her life because she is there for her life. You know, she has a life sentence. Rizzo is this powerful, sort of explosive person she has the guise of the peacemaker. Georgie is this frantic energy, and Kalia is probably more openly emotional and affectionate than any one of them, but also has this like oozing confidence, you know?
Yeah, she's I'd say kind of the fun one. I mean, Kalia is with Sean, who, like you said, I mean, she's in an open, loving relationship within the prison.
Yeah.
So it's like right there is like, you're seeing an emotional and affectionate side of an inmate where all the others are just alone, lonely. Cat Lady has a moment where she really expresses her loneliness to Cam and everything. But yeah, Kalia has Sean, and then they can joke around, they can be loving to each other. So even within the Coven, Kalia had times of making jokes and everything too. So a lighthearted aspect.
Absolutely lighthearted, yeah.
And also like the comedian, like the class clown kind of.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. She definitely goofs off more than the other characters. And
well, and then you think about how she got there too, though.
Oh yeah,
It's totally.
it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Like, we'll get into like the specifics of how she got there, but she beat someone up in a manner where there was a less funny way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, it was a pretty funny weapon to choose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just that sense of irony she has, you know? And her relationship with Sean is like, I mean, we see like some sexual relationships and some power dynamics, but this is like the only like committed relationship that we see in jail.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Sean is someone who we have to get into more next volume. She's we know that she is Kalia's supportive, silly, funny girlfriend who works in the kitchen, and she isn't as involved in the Coven as the other ones. She's like more on the outskirts, and she's a bit of like a loving troll, you know. So yeah, that is our cast of main characters, and then we have oh my god, I'm forgetting Tanya.
Yeah.
Tanya. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe Tanya's like probably after Cam the
She's
most
one
prominent
of the,
character.
Yeah, the main characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
So-
you almost wouldn't expect right away, in a way.
Right.
Like, because, I mean, Tanya is the first to try and be friends with Cam, but you wouldn't think of how prominent she was going to become.
Right. Right.
Definitely in
Yeah.
chapter 2.
Absolutely. Yeah. She I mean, the climax of the book kind of more focuses on Tanya once Cam settles her issue. But yeah, Tanya's also a character who you came up with. So can you get a bit more into like what Tanya meant to you?
Yeah, to me, she's kind of, because she's still in the prison, has a drug problem, and to me, she's very immature.
Yeah.
And I feel that the girls around her, like, she's someone in the Coven where they all are there to take care of her. There's nothing that they can really get, I guess, from her until this connection that she has with Cam.
Right.
At first, she's sort of like the little sister of the group, I want to say.
Which is funny because she's older than some of the other
yeah,
people.
but she's immature in her head. So it's like, I don't know. She's just a little bit maybe like stunted in her emotions.
Yeah.
And the girls know that she's kind of off her. Like, they don't trust her, first of all, to be sober all the time. Right. You know, they don't trust her to be telling the truth all the time. When she comes with the news about this new lady in the prison, at first she's not one that they take seriously, but she's not someone that they don't love.
Yes.
Yeah, they figure she's exaggerating or, I don't know, just making it up, like she was high that day or something.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, because we'll also elaborate on that scene, but...
And I feel like this does make her feel like important when she can see things.
It does, yeah.
Something that the others can't.
Yes.
And so it does bring her more into the group as like a tool.
Yes.
And like maybe adds on to her stress too at the same time.
Because say Cat Lady or Kalia came to Rizzo with the same information that Tanya did, Rizzo would trust them
Wouldn't have to
more
be
quickly.
Tested. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think what we do with Tanya is that she wants more than just the ritual of it all. You know, she wants quote unquote real magic. Like she wants like what she sees on TV to be real. And we don't reveal it until later. Why? Because at first, like we just think that she is super immature and just wants to like see cool things and do cool things. But really, she's looking to prove the existence of supernatural and the afterlife for a very specific reason. Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. And we'll get into that in a bit. But just to round out our cast, we have our coven and then we have our villains. And in this issue, this volume, the main villain is this inmate named Bean. And Bean is I'd say somewhat new prisoner. You know, she hasn't been there. She's been there longer than Cam, but not long enough where she has a support system.
No.
And with Bean, we're telling these two dual stories where Cam is finding her support system in this coven led by Rizzo, and Bean has the chance to get a support system by going to this lady Diane, who runs sort of this like prison mob, and Bean, the idea with her was just the idea of weakness hidden by aggression. She has every chance throughout the entire book to be helped by Cam or anyone around her, but instead she chooses to fight her way through, and she ends up making enemies along the way in a couple of different ways. But she
definitely stubborn. I mean, that's
how
it makes it obvious about how she even ended up in jail, because
Absolutely.
It's just like with that type of stubborn attitude of just rebelling against everything all the time, rebelling
Absolutely.
against help or anybody being nice to her or anything like that. And then, I mean, she chose the way of something more dangerous of like, how can she get in with the mob crew that she sees as more powerful. And of course it's just like getting into a sorority or anything. It's like you have to be initiated, like you have to do something to prove you're worthy to become a member.
Yes. I mean, the true villain in the background is Diane. Like you say, she's
like
the one.
The puppeteer.
Exactly. She's the one who like has to do that initiation to get Bean in.
Yeah.
But with Prison Witch Volume 1, the idea here is like playing with power too. Like, Cam is a new inmate, and she has this immense power. And normally, in a story, I mean, especially comics too, you have a villain who usually outclasses the hero. Whereas Bean is so much weaker than Cam.
Oh, yeah.
So much weaker. And the reason that she's a threat is twofold. One, Cam is a regular person. If Bean stabs Cam is going to bleed, you know? Two, a bigger threat to Cam is what happens to her if they get into a fight and she kills Bean, right? Like, she doesn't want to have to be put in a situation where she uses her anger, which manifests as this fiery girl, which we'll get into in the actual story.
Yeah, we didn't mention that yet.
Didn't mention that yet. As a weapon, right? Because she could easily just, like, turn Bean to like a roasted fucking
ashes.
like ashes, you know?
Yeah.
And
she can harness a power that pretty much manifests outside of her.
Yes.
That can hurt you physically.
Absolutely. And she doesn't want that to be her. You know, she wants to reject that part of her. So when she gets into a fight with Bean, as much as the physical threat of being stabbed is looming, much, much more potent to Cam is the idea of, I have this inside me. I almost killed someone for just a random altercation on the street. What happens when someone's actually trying to kill me? Because, like, Cam doesn't want to kill Bean, and she definitely doesn't want to kill Bean that way.
No.
You know?
No, she'd feel guilt. She's not a villain. She doesn't know what's wrong with her, and that's why she's in this predicament.
Yes.
Like, Cam thinks that she's possessed or she's evil, that something's taking over her.
Yes.
And meanwhile, it's more like unharnessed or unperfected abilities that she has to learn how to control emotions.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And lastly, Diane. We won't talk about her that much because she's more prominent next volume.
In next volume, we'll learn more about the past relationship that Diane has with Rizzo, because they're no longer friends. They're in different groups now, and they're like enemies now.
Exactly.
Essentially, because their soldiers or whatever, their ladies, are going against each other.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
and they're the
both
team
the
captains,
leaders,
so it's like, what happened between them, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely a secret past.
Because there's an
that we'll get
allusion,
into.
like it alludes to it in volume 1, but volume 2 is when we'll get more like into it.
Definitely.
With flashbacks and stuff, maybe. We'll see.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And fucking, what I love about both Bean and Diane as villains is that, like, physically, both of them are not intimidating people.
No.
Like, Diane is, like, a bit creepy looking, but she is very frail.
Yeah.
Her power is much elsewhere, you know?
It's all manipulation. Or,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's why
Smarts.
I say puppeteer.
For
because
Rizzo, it's the smarts, and for Diane, probably more manipulation.
Definitely. Definitely.
And Rizzo has connections too. Like, she's very smart. And like you said, she's explosive, but we haven't seen that yet. She's very good at keeping her cool.
Yes.
And she has connections with people, not only like with Diane from before, but from people that work in the prison and things like that. So you know that she's able to build connections, like positive connections with people around her, because she's so smart.
Absolutely. And we've seen Rizzo at the end of the volume take a situation that could have been bad for her girls and make it Diane's problem and use it against Diane in that way, you know. So she we get a sense of that puppeteer nature a bit from both of them, you know. So let's get into the covers. Prison Witch Volume 1's main cover is by Jen St. Ange, and this was the first cover that she did for us. And man, it's so cool and so clear. It's a bit of a different style than the actual interiors, but she was the first one actually to draw Cam, Kalia, and Kelly.
Yes, I love this cover. I think they're, like, it is a bit different because I feel like it's a little bit softer around the edges, but their eyes are so pretty and glowy, and the glow of, like, the blue fire and everything is so pretty. I love the color scheme. They all have great facial expressions, too.
Absolutely. And having Jen be the one who actually took our description of the characters and brought them to life was very important for the book, because she really led the visual direction of the book. And we'll get into what the interiors look like very soon, but she was able to really give a sense of power and vulnerability to all three of these characters, who are three characters who we're hoping to follow for a long time now, you know?
Yeah, I really do love this cover.
Yeah, and I mean, Cam is actually holding the blade that actually makes an appearance later on in the book, and to see Cam's powers shown in such a simplistic way, if she's just holding out her hand and the blue fire is just coming off of it, where it's nothing too dramatic, it's subtle.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And her face in this one, I love it because it almost looks like in this picture with her hand up and like the controlled fire right there and the look on her face, this is a point where like she knows what she's doing now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this almost feels
really
like
like
the
it.
end of the story.
Because
It
she's
does.
like, yeah, she's
Absolutely.
come into herself almost, and she's like floating in the middle of the 3 candles. It's so cool.
100% agree.
Really cool.
And a little secret here too is that with this cover, Rizzo was initially on this cover. Cam was floating higher in the air, and Rizzo was in the background. But we simplified it to bring Cam down to leave a bit more room for the logo, and to have Cam more center focused, you know. But it was also just very cool to see Jen draw Rizzo.
This is perfect spacing, I think, right here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is our first cover by Jen. We went on to have many more because we love Jen's work.
Yeah, she's great.
Absolutely. And then we brought in a friend of ours, Michelle Lockamy, who drew a print for Destiny New York. And we loved it so much that we wanted to see her draw, or paint really, a cover for Prison Witch. So our variant is this beautiful painted image of Cam and the power within her called Nama.
Yeah, and then this one, you can actually see the character Nama in front and center here, kind of like emerging from her. And then there's the spirally, the blue is all around. This one's super neat. The flame's more engulfing her in this one, and it's just her.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
God, I love this cover so much.
It's awesome. I mean, Cam's hands are actually still handcuffed to show kind of just the trapped energy to me. I mean, she has Nama coming out of her, but Nama actually looks more in control than Cam. I mean, Nama has her hands in a relaxed position, almost a focused look in her eyes.
I was thinking.
Yeah,
focus.
she's in control of Cam here. Cam doesn't look drowning in it here, but still not in control of her power.
100%.
More like buzzing with energy in this
Yeah,
one, whereas in
exactly.
the other cover she's more like calm about it. But
Yeah.
I love Cam's face in this one too. It's just a different style. The lines are different and everything because it was made differently, right? I'm not good with art.
Yeah.
But it's so cool to have the both of them. I really feel like I would be missing out if I didn't have both of these covers.
For
Yes.
sure.
'Cause
That's
they're
what's
both
so
amazing.
cool. Like to get to do, you know, Kickstarter variant covers that are limited edition and everything. It's to not want to pick up these would be, you know,
Oh, yeah.
crazy.
Definitely.
No, it's so fun to have both.
This
It
cover
really is.
actually, the variant cover inspired my latest like tattoo on my arm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It
So-
looks a lot similar in ways. Yeah. And on the back of the book, we have Erica D'Urso actually did an image on the back, which shows Cam kind of hunched over in a type of fetal position, and Nama is doing the same but coming out of her in a way.
Opposite.
Yeah,
on her back and a little smaller. It's super cool because the image itself makes like a complete circle.
Yeah.
And it's like geometrical looking, and then there's a little bit of overlapping blue and red color, but it's like just a 2-color image kind of, but it's kind of like a yin yang sort of thing to me.
Ooh, that's a good way to put it.
It's
yeah.
really
100% agree.
Yeah, and I mean Nama looks grumpy, honestly, and that
she's like a
is-
grumpy kid.
Yeah, like a grumpy
Totally.
kid, and you know, makes sense.
What's so cool about this image is that when we hired Erica D'Urso to draw Prison Witch, she tested on 2 random pages. One from both from chapter 2, actually. We had nothing on chapter 1 written. We just had 2 random scenes from chapter 2. And Erica tested and did an amazing job. And then we gave her the script. And very early into the process, she drew this back cover for us as a gift, which is a random choice that she did for fun. And I think that shows how much she gets the book.
Yeah. That's so neat. That's amazing because, I would like to think that, you know, she read the story and did some artwork for us and was inspired to make that because it perfectly exactly fits the theme. It's
It really
so nice.
does. It's very impressive.
Absolutely. So let's get into the actual book.
Woo.
Let's start with our dedication here, okay?
Oh, Jay.
Amy writes, I dedicate this book to our editor and great friend, Shannon Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for being such a great asset to our team and taking such personal pride in my stories, this one specifically.
Yeah, that, like, oh man.
I remember
it was so sweet.
You're
and
so
like,
nice.
the thing is, when we were making the book, I as well felt very connected to things that were happening with Cam of not being able to understand or control your anger or emotions or moments of lashing out. Just, you know, it just made a lot of sense to regular human interactions that you could be experiencing. Like we said before, these are just real people, you know, going through stuff, and they end up in bad situations, they end up in prison, but, you know, the magic aspect is pretty realistic, you know, and we like to do that with the idea of the coven too, where nothing is too fantasy, where it is still realistic. Like they're practicing Wicca, and it's more easily connected to.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it grounded because instead of introducing a whole world with magic, we wanted instead the real world reacting to an instance of magic.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And my dedication is, it had to happen. Now that I'm free to create without restriction, free to do projects like this with my brilliant wife, I feel compelled to dedicate this to a man with whom I've served time in what any writer would call a prison of sorts. I dedicate this one to Raven Gregory. We're free, my friend, we're free. And that is just a bit of a... you know, Raven and I were both exclusive to a company for a long time. We both created many stories for that company that we didn't own. And now that I'm here, able to hear Amy tell me an idea that I love and say, yes, let's do this, without having to think, oh, but I have obligations here. That freedom as a writer is what I always dreamed this would be for me, you know?
Yeah, and you don't have to sit back and say, who's going to pick this idea up? Who's going to let us do this idea?
What hoops do I have to jump through, and what do I have to drop from this idea to make it work?
Yeah, instead, all we have to do is reach out to a crowd and have it funded out of just love from people.
Yeah, super stoked on that. I am still so incredibly impressed and in awe with like the Kickstarter community and Kickstarter just platform and the people that work for them, because they've been so good to us and for us.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so chapter 1 is titled Solipsism. Okay. Now, have either of you experienced this? The thought or fear that you might be the only real person to actually exist.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely like a human fear that will hit you at some point in your life, that you're like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
It's like when you say a word or like your name too much and it starts to not sound real.
Right.
Yeah, just like, that blown up to the actual whole fucking world, you know? Like some Truman Show action.
Yeah. Love that movie.
Oh, it's such a good one.
Yeah.
And yeah, Cam, I think the reason that we chose that title is it's kind of, that feeling must be so much worse when you're also the only person you know who's experienced something supernatural. Like, how lonely must it feel to see something that other people don't see? Because Cam, when we start this, we don't show what's going on with her, but she is in her mind being haunted by, she doesn't know what, you know?
Yeah, she can't see it. It's not like she knows what's,
Yeah,
she knows
she sees fire, and that's
she
it.
hurt someone with fire.
Absolutely, yeah. She sees fire, and she has seen it manifest as a little girl. She has no name for it. She doesn't know if it's a ghost, if it's a demon. She has no idea. She just knows that something supernatural is happening with her, and no one else sees what's going on.
Right.
So yeah, let's get into the actual scene. The first scene opens up on day 34 of Cam Turner's 5-year sentence. Okay, and
so it starts out in a very realistic way of the first thing we see is Cat Lady in the cell with Cam, and she's taking a piss.
Yeah.
She's just trying to go to the bathroom.
Daily routine.
Yeah,
you know?
very invasive.
We see like
feeling.
some COs.
Yeah.
So far.
The guard comes in to call them out because you're not in control of what you're doing that day. You're forced into whatever, and Cat Lady, feels invaded.
Yeah, we wanted it to get that sense of just complete lack of privacy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the whole book, yeah. We'll see people naked or getting in fights or all their private times, masturbating.
Yeah, absolutely. And also this establishes too that Cam is physically close to Cat Lady, but they're not friends. They don't know one another, and they're just here stuck together. Right. And also we introduced this character here, Theo Ramirez, who Cat Lady calls by name Roberto, and that's the first sense that we have that this CO to Cat Lady and the other ladies who are in the coven is more than just a CO.
Yeah. And he corrects her too because he's trying to do his job.
Yeah.
Especially in front of the new inmate who is Cam.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he says you have to call me by my professional title.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And the design of the prison. Now, I sent Erica D'Urso a bunch of documentary scenes because we wanted it to just seem really real, just seem real and not exaggerate, and not focus too much on the politics of the prison. Because truth is, we aren't Orange is the New Black. We're very aware that this comic is focused on the characters and the magic. We're not getting into the actual design of the prison system or making any grand statements about that.
Yeah.
But we wanted the setting to be really realistic. So we ended up sending a lot of reference to Erica that way. And
the checkered floor really gives a feel when they go into the cafeteria to eat. It has that jail lunchroom feel with all the tables put together and a long rectangles. You know,
and you're being watched by guards at all times.
Bars on the
much.
Windows.
Yeah,
100%. And our intention at first was, I believe that we wanted it to be. To not be a minimum security prison, but the truth is it would have been so much harder to have the characters interact.
Right.
So we free them up a bit and have it where the characters don't have to be taken out of their cell in cuffs every time.
Yeah.
There are prison documentaries that we watched where the guards will lead the inmate back to the cell in cuffs, and then the inmate will have to stick their hands through a slot in the cell to be uncuffed.
That's crazy.
And then to come out again, they stick their hands out, get recuffed, and then come out again. And that would have been too prohibitive, and Eric would have to draw way too many handcuffs, you know?
Yeah.
It just didn't give to the story.
Right.
So
And there are things that we had to be careful of, looking back here. I remember a note we had to give Erica, everyone has to lose their pockets.
Yeah, they can't have any pockets where they could stash anything in, weapons or contraband.
Exactly. Exactly. And now we're moving to our second.
She's never been to prison, so she's like, oh yeah.
Exactly. and honestly, I didn't think of it first either. Shannon,
exactly.
you noticed they have pockets.
Yeah, I mean, because otherwise you're just drawing a pair of pants and you're not thinking about it.
Right.
Totally.
And it also it gives us more tension narratively. There are things that the inmates have to hide in this volume, and they can't just put it in their pockets.
Yeah.
No.
And, they have to bury something. So. We're moving to scene 2 in the cafeteria. And this is where Cam first encounters Tanya. And Cam is reading a book. And we kind of established that Cam already has a passing interest in the supernatural because she's reading a book. Well, not even supernatural, but just the
astrology.
Metaphysical,
Yeah.
She's reading a book on astrology, which Tanya takes as an invitation to talk to her and make friends while she's reading.
And this is where you kind of learn the kind of energy that Tanya has right away. It's really like in your face, literally. But not in a bad way, like aggressive, just inadvertently, because she's so excited all the time.
Overly friendly, kind of jumpy, like
skittish,
yeah.
Like, yeah, I think that the best exchange to really sell that dynamic is this in panel 4, when Cam gives Tanya a bunch of times to not keep asking the same question. Tanya goes, "Hi there, what you reading?" Cam goes, "Just something I picked up." Tanya goes, "Where?" Not a normal question.
No.
Cam goes, "Huh?" And Tanya goes, "Where'd you get it? In the library? On the outside? Ooh, what's that, astrology?" Like, she's just spewing out all these questions.
Yeah, rapid fire questions.
Desperate for connection, And then here is what we had a bit of a discussion about editorially. We wanted to show that Tanya sees something happen with Cam, but we didn't want to show it to the reader yet.
No.
Because Cam has hinted at what she has inside of her, but we haven't revealed it at all yet. But Tanya, we see in her eye a reflection of fire.
Yeah, because Cam eventually can't stand how much Tanya's bothering her.
Yes.
And she bluntly stops her.
Yes.
She's, "Lady, get out of my face."
Yeah, she's officially irritated.
Yes.
Whatever. And that's when Tanya can see, whoa, like there was
Something
more.
changed.
There was more to that anger.
And I do see so much Amy in this scene, where there's someone who she's just being polite to, just being short with, and then the person just pushes it a bit too far, and the anger comes out, But what's also true about Cam and my wife is as soon as Tanya continues to be nice to her, Cam doesn't keep that same tense energy. She loosens up a bit and feels bad that she barked at Tanya there.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah.
But Tanya gets the hint, and she does end up backing up. But this is what will lead her to start to talk about what she saw.
Yes.
With her friends who are the coven.
Which we meet then on the next page.
Yes. In the third scene, we see the coven, and we start with just a little garden scene, We wanted to start in a place where we're always discovering things about these characters, always discovering more with every scene. So here, when we introduce them, it could have been a scene where they're doing witchcraft, but instead, they're just in the garden, and it's very innocuous. And even though Rizzo is doing witchcraft, to the new reader, it appears that she's just planting some scallions,
Yeah.
And I feel like she does like to be mysterious that way. So I think that is what led her to like gardening and stuff, because it seems so low key.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so she's like, "What? I'm just like tending to my onions or whatever.
Absolutely.
Leave me alone."
And
and you see the connection in this first panel where Georgie's getting her hair braided by Kalia.
Yes.
Where we don't know what their connection is yet, but we can obviously tell that it's friendly and affectionate.
Definitely.
And it shows a softer side of Kalia from the jump.
Yeah,
Even
right
though
away.
she looks pretty tough with her tattooed neck and everything like that, she's like very sweet when it comes to her friends.
Yeah.
It's true. And Kalia also has a bit of a funny moment here too, as Tanya Tanya hasn't even gotten the chance to deliver her big, huge news that she comes to tell them about what she saw in Cam. And Kalia, I feel like she always has a story, like, "Oh yeah, this happened to so-and-so." And she just loves to interrupt with like just a random story. And just Georgie telling her to be nice leads her to a story about a bus hitting someone.
Yeah.
Just such a random little character moment there, just to show a bit more about her.
The art in that is fun too, because it's like a quick flashback, and since it is comedic, it's like more cartoony.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's very funny.
And then Tanya goes on to to tell her coven about what she saw, and what she believes that she saw is proof that Cam, the new inmate, is a fire goddess, And Here we get that tension between Tanya wanting to believe in the outright dazzling visual supernatural, and Rizzo taking offense at the idea that what they do isn't real witchcraft.
Yeah, because Tanya says straight out, I saw her perform real witchcraft, and Rizzo is like, real witchcraft, huh? Like, what is it that we're doing? Just a joke to you?
Yeah.
Type of thing?
But to Tanya, it's exciting because it's, in a sense, like proof that she can do more.
Yes.
Yeah.
For what she needs personally.
Exactly.
But I just wanted to point out a quick, funny, the way Tanya describes Cam to the coven mates before she starts describing, like, explaining what she saw.
Yeah.
She says, you know, my roommate Cameron, I think, bookworm, freckly nose, look like she wants to kill everyone. That's pretty funny. That's like how someone might describe me to a new barista.
It's true. It's a fact. And yeah, she has a few good lines here, Cat Lady, where Tanya starts to kind of gesticulate as she's describing, I have seen real witchcraft. And Cat Lady goes, okay, here we go, cue spirit fingers. And it shows like they're able to kind of like poke fun at one another. But when Tanya says that she's serious, she says, I'm in love and trust here, no? And Rizzo goes, always. You know, like she's, even though they doubt Tanya, they're always willing to hear her out.
Totally. And that's what brings me back to, like, they do love her.
Yeah.
They just have to make sure that what she's saying is the truth before they believe her.
Exactly. Because, like, you said this about her before, too, about Georgie, actually. But Tanya, too, like, Tanya, when she doesn't tell the truth to them, she isn't being malicious, you know? She's just being herself, you know? Yeah. She has a different way of looking at things. And I think, too, Rizzo's defense of what they're doing as real magic was also you, Amy, who has studied magic, you kind of like stating to the reader, like, you aren't going to have this as a book where you are establishing magic as only this, like, visual supernatural thing. Like, you are respecting all forms of magic here.
Yeah.
And then we get into our next scene, which is the shower scene where we introduce Bean. Where Bean is getting fucked up, just like punched over and over by Big Mary. And Cam notices this and tries to intervene. Now, Bean, we don't get a sense of who she is because she has her mouth being sealed, and she's just getting punched in the gut. And we wanted that
she's
to...
She's being, like, ganged up on, so she really she can't do much.
Yes.
It's just, like, we see her.
Yeah, I mean, and this proves that Bean has no power in the jail.
Yeah.
I mean, she's completely being bullied, and this is the start of what ends up being Cam and Bean's rivalry.
Yes.
And you can tell, too, that she has no friends still because the only person that might say something and did was a complete stranger to her.
Yeah,
she didn't
just
have, like,
another newbie.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one here is helping her. And you even see, it's very small, but in the first page of the shower scene, panel 5, Tanya's there and she's just leaving.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like, no one's helping Bean at all.
But Tanya does see that Cam steps forward.
Exactly. And so with this scene, too, we wanted to be very careful because we didn't want to sexualize the idea of, like, Bean getting assaulted while she's naked. And I think that it reads very much as just Bean being cornered when she's in her most vulnerable moment.
Yeah, it feels it. You feel bad.
And that's what happens.
Scared for
You're
her.
in the jail and people gang up on you and beat you up, I guess. You know, like, that's what happens.
Definitely. And Bean, when Cam defends her, she is very quick to reject that defense.
Very quick.
And
and it's because the other ones kind of start mocking her too, like, "Oh, is this your girlfriend?"
Yes, and yeah, Bean. Well, first of all, Bean says, "Ew, what the hell? I don't even know her. I'm not gay." After Big Mary asks if Bean is Cam's bitch once Cam defends her, and hey, Bean, what you doing with that haircut then? You know? So
she's just hip.
Yeah.
And Bean, the name for her was chosen very deliberately because she's a very small character, small in stature, small in bravery, small in every way, you know? And she instead of taking Cam's kindness, and
She's like, no homo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she sees that as another opportunity for someone to take advantage of her, to like be mean to her, and she just totally rejects it and even pushes Cam.
Yeah. Yeah, so she pushes Cam.
Yes.
And this is what starts to set Cam off. And we have a beautiful, fiery splash page of Cam's reaction now with Nama starting to take over.
Yes.
And so Nama is starting to take over, and it's uncontrollable. You can see because Cam herself is actually thinking like, please no, like I don't want this to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, Cam
and
is
also side
holding her
note,
own head.
Tanya's still behind the door, peeking at this whole scene.
Watching
so she's
the whole
about
thing.
to see some more to be able to prove to her friends like something's going on.
And two, I'll note here, again, don't listen to this if you haven't read the book, because we're not just doing spoilers for chapter 1. We're doing full book spoilers.
Yeah, this is the story. Y'all.
We
Get with it, y'all.
we hear Nama before we see her.
Oh, yeah, this is that first time.
Yes, and that right there is a hint about what Nama is, because Prison Witch is a first-person narrative. It's narrated by Cam. All of the captions are Cam's thoughts, so we very deliberately had it where Nama's first word is a caption.
Yeah.
That's Cam's thoughts as Nama, you know?
Yeah, they are connected.
Yes.
They're the same. And what does Nama say? She says, burn.
Yeah.
So she's very like she's angry.
Yeah.
You know?
And what's significant here is like, because Cam resisted, instead of burning Bean, Nama pushes her into the wall. And granted, it's a pretty violent push.
Yeah, and she's laughing. She's doing a he, because Nama is a spirit of Cam in a young form, and this is her having fun as a child almost, but a malicious way.
Yeah, she thrives on
Because
the anger.
she's so
yeah.
pent up that exactly when she's able to lash out is when that spirit or the entity itself is like appeased.
Yeah, pent up is a perfect word for it. Like,
Yeah.
because Cam suffocates her. She rejects her. She pushes her under instead of dealing with what having this anger means.
Yeah.
Then,
and think about doing that to a regular kid. Like, their reaction
Absolutely.
is going to be a temper tantrum, pretty much.
And it feels good to them.
Yeah.
so that really starts the conflict between Cam and Bean. And now, this transitions into our next scene, which Tanya leads Cam back to her cell. And
She's been there behind the door.
she's been watching the whole shit.
So she takes her out of there. Like, we gotta go. You know,
Yes.
doesn't want her to get in a bigger fight now that she hurt Bean.
And here's where Tanya says, perhaps the saddest line of the whole book. She says, she's holding Cam's arm, pulling her along, and says, shh, it's okay, just walk with me, pretend that we're friends.
Aw.
And so that really establishes Tanya as someone who's going to help Cam here, because she tells her that she's special, which gives Cam the idea that Tanya might see, our cat Chi-Chi's leaping around here, Tanya might see something in Cam that only Cam has seen up until this point.
Yeah,
You know?
this is taking Cam off guard. That,
Absolutely.
That she's being helped and that something was alluded to that Tanya might know what's going on.
Yes. And then, a very telling scene. We transition into our next page, where we see Bean mopping the floor, and she is saying to Cam what she would have said,
like
but
murmuring.
didn't.
Yeah.
And who hasn't done that? You know, like I always think back
I
to
do that about
conflicts.
customers all the time.
All right, so then we have this new character, Yana, who is perhaps the most physically intimidating prisoner that we've shown so far.
Yeah, Yana scares the shit out of me,
Like
actually.
she's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, she's a huge lady.
Definitely. Comes up to Bean And she kind of gives a little bit of new information here. She says Bean thought that that her conflict with Big Mary was just a failure because she got fucked up, but we learned here that Bean was on a mission. Her first test to join this this mob in prison was to steal cigarettes from Big Mary.
Yep, and that's Diane's group.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Bean did it. Bean got fucked up for it, but she was able to steal these cigarettes, and that earned her a place at Diane's table to meet with her.
Yeah.
So
so now you realize, like, oh, first you like, if I, as a reader, I'd be like, oh, like, I wonder, like, what happened? Is it just because she's a loner? You know, wasn't that? And then you realize that she incited that.
Yes.
By stealing.
Yes.
So you realize she's a little punk ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
She deserved
like,
to be beat up.
I see
much.
what happened. I see what's happening.
Exactly. And it shows Big Mary in a different light too, because it makes you think, like, at first you see her and she's just like punching a naked girl in the shower.
Right. Yeah, you think that she's just a real
But someone
shitbag.
stole her cigarettes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's
Exactly.
like you're
And
not
it's that
gonna get that
little
often.
Exactly. Yeah, like what would Big Mary be if she didn't punch Bean? You know?
She's just standing her ground and saying, "Don't fuck with me."
Yeah. And we'll show more of her in Volume 2 for sure.
Oh hell yeah.
So then we move into this was maybe I think the first scene that Amy and I did write together, and our process was this: we would like kind of break down what needs to happen in the chapter, and then I would say we could fit this scene onto this page, this onto this page, and then I gave Amy a printout of the script, and she wrote all of Cam's narration and dialogue for the scenes that she wanted to write. And this scene right here, I remember was very, very much like you had pages and pages of content for this scene, and this was where you were kind of juggling two things. You had the scene where Rizzo is throwing rocks at Cam in attempts to make her angry, to see if what Tanya said was true. And then, at the same time, you have Tanya opening up to Cam about what happened with her mother, which is very important later on for Tanya.
Yeah, when I was first working with this, I didn't even realize the importance of that yet, too.
Yeah, it just, at this point in the story, what it does is just brings the reader, like, closer to Tanya.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of just being kind of that wily girl in the coven that's, like, always around. You realize, like, oh, she has a family and she has problems and
Absolutely.
she's her own person, and she feels comfortable enough with Cam at this point to talk to her about it, and Cam is comfortable enough to not tell her to be quiet at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. She's beyond that annoyance.
Yes.
She allows Tanya to have that moment, and Tanya talks about her mother who was sick, and because of Tanya's sentence, the cost of her being in prison was not being around for her mother's death. You know,
Yeah.
and now she came and visit her grave.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it proves that, you know, when you're in prison with all this free time, all you are is dwelling on these things that happened in your life. You're just stuck with nothing to do but think.
Not much to change about it.
Yeah, and
because
then
you're there.
nobody to talk to but strangers, pretty much.
Absolutely. And like I always think back to like people who, when someone in their family gets sick, they feel bad once they're dead for not having seen them more. What about when you can't see them at all, and it's kind of your fault? You know, like Tanya's drug problem led to her being in jail, and there's definitely like an issue with the system where they imprison people with drug problems rather than helping them.
Yeah.
But Tanya feels that she earned her sentence, and she's stuck here and kind of blames herself for this too.
Right.
What made you want to have Rizzo test Cam in this way? Like, it's a very, very forward way where she throws little pebbles at Cam, and they're not the smallest pebbles either, you know. And she hits her face. What do you think it says about Rizzo and Cam there?
I feel like the reason that Rizzo did that is because, first of all, she's like never spoken to Cam. She doesn't know who she is, and she doesn't trust that if she comes to Cam with a question as serious and as in depth as what she might want to know, that she will get a straight answer.
Yeah.
So
she can't walk right up to her and be like...
She's just someone who wants to know the truth. She doesn't care how she gets it, you can ask someone something 1,000 times and they'll lie to you, and then that's
she felt
not
like
the truth. She just wanted to get
better.
Exactly. She's about action. She knew it wasn't actually going to hurt her, and she was curious, and it was like an immediate thing, and it was simple, and it worked, and she didn't have to beat around the bush at all.
Definitely.
That's why she did that.
And that leads us to our most stunning, in my opinion, image, or one of them, of the book.
Yeah,
which,
I love this.
Oh yeah, this interior
image.
It's so cool. We wanted to kind of capture, on our logo, we have a full moon bordered by 2 half moons. And we captured that in a way that was a bit, it's that, and it also ties into what Amy was saying about that yin yang of Nama and Cam.
Dude, it's so good. It, like you said, it has both symbols there.
Yes. And this right here is something that you can only really do in comics. You know, like,
oh yeah,
it will play out so differently on screen. And yeah, I think that just this one image says so much about Nama and Cam, and it's just stunningly beautiful to me. We end this scene with Rizzo admitting to Tanya that while Tanya saw Nama manifest, Rizzo did not.
Yeah.
Which we thought it would be too easy if everyone could see Nama.
Because what about the rest of Cam's life, you know?
Exactly.
And then just 2 people all of a sudden.
But what we have here is Rizzo sees that the grass where Cam was standing is burned. Now, I wanted to keep that in that scene very innocuous, because the truth is Rizzo chooses to believe Tanya and the evidence. It still isn't 100% sure, right?
Yeah, like it's a very specific thing what's happening with Cam, so there could be other explanations.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And on that note, we're actually going to break this podcast right here in the end of chapter 1, just because the next scene is going to take a long time, because it introduces a lot about the characters. So, break here after the scene where Nama first manifests in front of Rizzo, and then next episode, we're going to pick up with the lunch scene on day 36 of Cam Turner's 5-year sentence, okay?
Yeah,
totally. Thanks for listening, you guys.
Yes, please continue next chapter. And also, again, if you for some reason listen to this whole podcast, this whole commentary, without having Prison Witch, what are you doing?
Yeah, we actually didn't spoil too much so far, so you have a chance.
I love audiobooks, so I was thinking, even if you do listen to this podcast and you're not gonna like hyperventilate about spoilers, listen to the podcast and then read the book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just read the book.
It's a graphic novel, so there's images.
It's sick. And that's what I love about it, too, being a busy
adult,
you know, is the mix of art and story that you can actually, like, finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
in a amount of time between jobs.
Absolutely. I mean, Prison Witch, I would say Volume 1, depending on your reading pace, I'd say maybe a good hour-and-a-half read.
Word.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
if you just go right through.
Amazon,
or just, like, 4 lunch breaks.
Yeah.
Go on Amazon, search Prison Witch, and check it out there. We don't do outros on this podcast anymore, so check out next week. We're coming back to you with Prison Witch Commentary Part 2.
Yes, thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Space between.